There are a lot of versions of death in comic books. You've got Marvel's version, where death is this mysterious woman that Thanos is obsessed with. Then there's the DC version, where death is this goth girl who's surprisingly upbeat and comforting. And of course, you got your classic Grim Reaper types and a bunch of smaller titles. I mean, some are terrifying, some are kind, but they all show up eventually. The funny thing is that in comics, death never sticks anyway. Characters die all the time, but they always come back. Sometimes it's time travel, sometimes it's clones, sometimes it's just comic book logic. It gets to the point where a major character dies and you don't even react. It's just like, they're on vacation. My father's still alive, thankfully, but what comes to mind is my college roommate, Sophia's dad. He passed away when we were in school. He was really important to her. She was a very detached person, and that was the only time I saw her get really emotional. She left school right after the funeral. Apparently, she had to go take over the family business. She was my best friend in college, but we really haven't kept in touch since then. Sophia never played video games as a kid. She didn't watch cartoons, didn't know any of the usual movie references the rest of us grew up with. It was like she skipped childhood entirely, but she could talk your ear off about fine wine and five-star restaurants. She was absurdly well-traveled for someone our age, and she knew things most people don't pick up until their 40s. And sometimes it felt like she'd been an adult forever. Like she never really had a kid phase at all. Sophia was studying criminology too, just like me. She was she was super smart and breezed through her classes. Honestly, I have no clue what her career goals were. She just never really mentioned what she wanted to do after graduation. Sophia wasn't from Scranton, but she'd been there a few times. Her grandfather lived in Pittston, which is only a few minutes outside of Scranton. When people think of Scranton, they really mean the whole Wilkes-Barre Scranton area, and Pittston is basically the center of that area. Ugh. My parents used to drag me off to see Santa in our annual parades when I was little. I mean, I would be up there, bundled up in about, 50 layers, standing on the freezing streets of Scranton, watching Santa ride in on a fire truck. Yeah, Santa on a fire truck, because, nothing screams Christmas magic like emergency vehicles. I'll be honest, I never really liked parades. They were always way too cold, and I couldn't feel my toes half the time, but, my parents thought it was like this great holiday tradition. So there we were, year after year. We get there early to stake out a good spot, and then we wait, and wait, and wait. By the time Santa finally made his grand entrance, I was usually too numb to care. He'd wave from the top of his fire truck, all jolly and festive, and everyone would just cheer. Meanwhile, I was just thinking about how I could not wait to get back to the car and blasts the heat. I only met Sophia's mom once. There was this one time when her parents picked her up and took her to some fancy restaurant. I only got to talk to her mom for a bit, but what stuck with me was, yeah, she just had this incredible fashion sense. She looked super stylish. Also, she got some pretty old school values. I could tell Sophia really got along with her. Well, I lost 2 immediate family members in back-to-back tragedies while I lived there, so yeah, I do associate Scranton with death. Under the circumstances, I think that's a pretty reasonable connection to make. I majored in forensic pathology and minored in criminology. I literally studied death in college, and not in a philosophical way, like actual bodies. Decomposition, trauma, all of it. It sounds morbid, but I like learning how to perform autopsies. There were rules, patterns. You could look at a mess and just figure out exactly what happened step by step. I used to think I wanted to be a surgeon. Seemed like a smart, respectable thing to do, but then I started picturing the patients whining, panicking, second-guessing everything. I knew I didn't have the patience for that. Dead people don't interrupt you. They don't lie about their symptoms or argue with you because they watched some quack on YouTube who gave them bad information. The dead just lay there and let you figure out what happened to them. Death in games usually isn't a big deal. You just respawn and keep going. But then you got hardcore modes where death is permanent. A lot of loot-based RPGs do that. People spend hundreds of hours building their characters, and then one mistake, it's all gone. I don't get the appeal. Yeah, most game deaths feel cheap anyway. You know, it's lag, bad AI, random luck. You know, it's just not fun. That's just stress and frustration waiting to happen. Not for me. I can't think of a single connection between Sophia and a bear. I mean, she never mentioned one to me, and she didn't even have a teddy bear. She did have a stuffed raccoon that kind of looked like a bear, though. We had this running joke about how the raccoon was a criminal, and she kept him around to study the criminal mind. It was only funny because he was just... Sophia didn't have a ton of friends. It's not like she couldn't make friends. She got along with everyone. She just didn't seem to have much interest in hanging out with other college kids. She wasn't the kind of person who suffered fools. It took months of being roommates before the two of us just really started being friends. Sophia wasn't really into comic books. She knew the big names, but that was about it. It was one of the few things I actually knew more about than she did, which was kind of refreshing. Most of the time, she was the expert on everything, but when it came to superheroes and storylines, that was my territory. Sophia and I both studied criminology, but the material never seemed to get to her. Everyone else had a phase where the case studies or autopsy photos started to feel heavy. Not Sophia. It was like she already had her own way of processing it. She just didn't flinch, never needed a break. It wasn't coldness exactly, more like detachment, like she was just naturally wired for it. Sophia was one of those people who never seemed afraid of anything, but man, was she safety-minded and cautious. She always carried pepper spray and even talked me into doing the same. She was the one who made sure we kept the blinds closed and the doors locked, no matter what. Yeah. Sophia taught me to always be aware of my surroundings. I mean, it wasn't like she was paranoid or anything. She just had a better understanding of the dangers in the world than I did. Sophia was a total film buff, especially when it came to movies from the 70s and 80s. She always said that was the golden age of cinema. Because of her, I'm pretty familiar with films from that time. Oh, we watched a ton of them together in our dorm room. Every time she found out about a critically acclaimed movie from that period I hadn't seen, she'd make sure we watched it together. Now it almost feels like I minored in film studies in college thanks to her. The comic book scene in Scranton is surprisingly solid, with a couple of great local shops that have impressive selections. It's not like the big city shops, but I found quite a few hidden gems there. Scranton is within driving distance of Philadelphia, so my dad took me to some, decent comic book conventions as a kid. Those, plus the Star Trek conventions he brought me to, are what got me started on the whole convention scene. And now conventions, they're just my go-to vacation. My dad was born and raised in the Scranton area. I mean, of course he was. Why else would anyone choose to live there, right? He's got this deep-rooted connection to the place, all those childhood memories and such. I mean, he still lives there. As for me, when the opportunity to move away came up, I was more than happy to take it. Scranton has its charms, as few as they may be, but it's just, it's not the place for me. Scranton and bears, huh? Well, that takes me back to Naog Park Zoo. My parents used to take me there when I was a kid. They had this bear exhibit, and we'd go and watch the bears lumber around their enclosure. I remember seeing them, but, if I'm being honest, I never really liked the zoo. My mom was the one who really was into them. Yeah, I didn't like it. The Scranton area was the only place she ever lived. She grew up there, just like pretty much everyone in that area. It's rare for anyone to ever move to Scranton. They only move from Scranton. I honestly don't know why everyone doesn't leave. There's almost no decent jobs. The winters are so brutal. You'd think Mother Nature had a vendetta against the place. What's even more confusing is that my mom had been to a ton of exciting places. She used to tell me stories about her adventures in Europe and other exciting places. I, I don't get why she never moved out of the area. I don't get it. After my mom died, I convinced myself her ghost was still in the house, specifically in her bedroom. I was just a kid, and it still feels dumb thinking about it now. I'd sneak in there when no one else was around and talk to her. Tell her how school was going, vent about stuff. Sometimes I even asked for advice. And the weirdest part is, I really believed I could feel her there. I was certain of it. I guess kids deal with grief in ways like that. Now, my mother never played video games. That was not her thing. But board games? Oh, man, she was all about those. We had a closet full of them, and she would drag them out any chance she got, trying to wrangle the rest of us into playing. We'd all sit around the table, and she'd get this huge kick out of it. Once I got older, I realized we weren't playing any of these games right. Not a single one. What we thought were the rules? Pfft, totally made up. It turns out Monopoly isn't supposed to take 6 hours and end in a screaming match. Who would have thought? Sophia used to put up this small Christmas tree in our dorm room every year, complete with decorations. Yeah, it was kind of nice, actually. I wasn't much into the whole decorating thing myself, but seeing that little tree did kind of give me a cozy feel. When I was a kid, I spent way too much time trying to figure out Santa. I mean, the guy's ancient, right? He never dies, never even seems to get older, so he had to be immortal. I decided he must be some kind of mythical creature. And for a while, I thought maybe he was a trickster spirit like Loki or something. But, that doesn't fit. Santa's way too consistent for that. Tricksters like chaos. Santa's all about rules. And eventually, I narrowed it down to two possibilities. One, he could be a watcher, like from Marvel Comics. Those big-headed guys who are supposed to just observe. Yeah, I figured maybe Santa decided once a year was an acceptable amount of interfering. He watches us all year, then steps in at Christmas to reward good behavior. Or two, maybe he was Odin. Odin used to travel the world in disguise. He rode through the sky during the wild hunt, and he was all about rewarding and punishing people based on what they did. If Odin wanted to stick around and adapt to modern times, becoming Santa would have been a way to do it. Later on, I found out that part of Santa's myth is actually based on Odin, and yeah, I was a little disappointed. I thought I'd come up with something really original. Nope. Santa Claus has popped up in a ton of comics over the years. In the X-Men, there's actually a version of Santa who's one of the most powerful mutants. I always thought that was a cool twist. And then there's that other comic where someone hires Deadpool to kill Santa. That one was just weird, but hey, it's Deadpool, so what do you expect? When I think of schools and Santa, there isn't much correlation between the two. I mean, school was always closed for about 2 weeks around Christmas, so Santa was more of a home thing. To me, holidays in general just meant a break from school. When I was young, it wasn't about the festivities as much as it was about getting some time off from classes and homework. Bye, school. I never understood why they say you should play dead if a bear attacks you. If a bear is attacking you, it's probably because it's hungry. If you pretend you're dead, it's still gonna eat you. It's not gonna flee the scene before the cops show up. It's a bear, not a hitman. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of dying in some unbelievably stupid way that becomes the only thing people remember. Like, I don't want to be the person who stuck a fork in the toaster and got electrocuted, or the idiot who stacked 2 wobbly chairs to change a light bulb and snapped their neck. Yeah. It's like one dumb move, then that's it. That's the story. No one would care who I was or what I did. I'd be remembered as the only person who actually died running with scissors. When I think of school and fear, the first things that come to mind are all the normal school anxieties. Like worrying about your appearance to impress a bunch of people you don't even like anyway. It's funny how much time and energy went into stressing over clothes and hair and fitting in. There was this constant pressure to look a certain way, to be accepted by peers who, in the grand scheme of things, didn't matter as much as we thought they did. Scranton and fear, huh? Well, yeah, a few things come to mind. One of the big ones is the fear of getting stuck there. I mean, growing up, it felt like everyone either stayed forever or couldn't wait to leave. I was definitely in the latter camp. The idea of not getting out, of just settling into the same routines without ever seeing what else was out there, that was pretty terrifying to me. And then there's the fear of those long, cold winters. As a kid, I remember the dread that came with the icy roads and the heavy snowfalls. Driving in that weather was always nerve-wracking, and the thought of getting stranded somewhere in a snowstorm, that was a real fear. Oh, Sophia was extremely well-traveled. She'd been to more countries than I'd been to states, which was impressive and, a little intimidating. She seemed to know a lot about everything. It was clear she had a lot of life experience. No, Sophia didn't play video games, which was the only downside of having her as a roommate. I tried to get her into playing some local multiplayer games, but she just wasn't into it. She did manage to convince me to go play laser tag with her once, thinking I'd love it since I'm a gamer. I thought it sounded fun, but I ended up having a panic attack during the game. I've only had a panic attack a few times in my life, and I'm not even sure what causes them. They've been so rare that I never got around to looking into why I had them. After my mom and brother died, I started thinking maybe there was something behind it. At first, I figured I must be cursed. When two people vanish from your life in such a short time, that kind of thing, it just makes sense to a kid. I started wondering if it was something else. Not a curse exactly, but maybe some force that targeted people for reasons no one could figure out. I came up with theories. Maybe it followed bloodlines, or maybe it waited for certain patterns, like specific dates or ages. I kept a notebook and wrote down anything that felt even a little off. Patterns I thought I saw. Strange coincidences, things like that. It probably didn't make much sense, but it gave me something to focus on. Something to blame. I guess that was my way of coping. I've never lost a friend. Well, not to death, but in September, I thought it was going to. My friend Scott had a heart attack. At least, that's what he thought. He called an ambulance and he got rushed to the hospital. Turned out it was a false alarm. He just had really bad heartburn. But for a few hours, we all thought he might die. Scott deals with death constantly. I think him being a detective kind of rewired his brain for it. He's not numb to it, no, not exactly, but he cushions it by making terrible dad jokes. I think it's his coping strategy, but it seems to work for him. There used to be a Care Bears comic book. I don't know anything about it, honestly. The only reason I even know about it is because I had an issue when I was young. I don't know where I got it. I don't remember much about it. I don't remember what the bear in my dream looked like, but it better not have been a Care Bear. Being scared of Santa Claus is bad enough, but being terrified of a Care Bear? That would just be too much.